की जय। श्रीमन महाप्रभु की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। श्री द्वादशी की जय। घोर भक्त वृंद की जय। घोर प्रेमानंद हरि बोल। So, good morning to all of you. Thank you very much for coming. My pleasure to have you again here with us. And well, we are continuing with our series of lectures on Vaisnava etiquette, rules and love in the life of a sadhaka. So we are today in our sixth meeting. We have quote unquote finished some ideas regarding the concept of Guru Seva in our previous lecture, and today we will start speaking about Sadhu-sanga, which is another way of continuing speaking about the same principle, but from another particular viewpoint. So today will be the first lecture on Sadhu-sanga. I think at least this will take two meetings minimum. So before starting, as usual, we will make some brief summary of what we were studying last session on Thursday, our third meeting concerning Guru Seva. We were sharing some further tips coming mainly from Hari Bhakti Vilas and mainly, of course, presented in the context of Gurukul, of a student living with the Guru in the ashram, very connected to how these dynamics applied in those times where Sanatana Goswami wrote these texts almost half a millennia ago. So some changes in between, as you may imagine. But we try to go beyond the relative aspect of that and take the essence of those recommendations given by Srila Sanatana Goswami. And well, he was recommending different things, for example, being ready to render menial service to Sri Guru in whatever form it may take. Do not get attached to the form seva may take, but actually it's very nice to be always willing to go to the most basic, simple forms of service and imbibe them with the deepest type of affection and intention towards Sri Guru. Also trying to identify and to be acquainted with those things that are favorite, if you will, to your Gurudev's taste in whatever form it means, not only necessary food, but whatever, and try to offer what he likes the most. Try to not eat before him. Again, all this in the context of Gurukul, but also apply to the idea of whatever we are eating. Ideally, we should have offered that first to Sri Guru, at least in our prayers and mentally in the altar or whatever. Try not to use her personal paraphernalia items. Some exception may be there with some remnants from the Guru's clothes, as if the Guru is still alive. If not, they become more worshipable, if you will, not so much for us to use as remnants. We also emphasize three important elements that also are connected to Sri Guru, that especially Krishnadas Kaviraj stresses them in Chaitanya Charitamrita, with the Mahaprasad, the remnants of his food, her food, the dust from his lotus feet, and the water that has washed those feet. So these three items are considered as very powerful, again, when taken with faith, when taken with surrender and affection, not merely by some external limitation. Another forms of prasad we also mentioned was like his harikatha, some form of remnant, some form of mahaprasad that is coming to him. He's chewing what has been chewed, if you will, by the previous members, the purvacharyas, and finding new and newer taste, which is different to how it seems the chewing of the material, so-called material pleasure. Also, we spoke a little bit about the principles of Bapu and Bani. Bapu serving Guru his body in a physical way, but Bani serving his instruction, his inner, if you will, whatever he has instructed to his precepts, and how to conceive those in terms also of substantial approach and external one. There could be a Bapu to the Bani, if you will. or a more substantial understanding of the Guru's instructions. And mostly we finished our meeting, last meeting, speaking about another forms of prasad, another forms of mercy that may express, play themselves out in the context of Guru Seva. In the context of Guru, sometimes may praise the disciple or sometimes may chastise the disciple. All that in the context of mercy. All that should be seen as different varieties of mercy, and we made some special emphasis when the Guru is chastising the disciple. And again, we have to properly understand the term to chastise and not just extend our mundane experience in connection to that term, but understand what do we refer here in the context of confidence, affection, like we may receive some correction, some advice, some remark from some senior elder personality who really deeply loves us in our lives. So this type of so-called chastisement we are mentioning, a special form of mercy. We share this nice story of the poet who was quite full of himself and fooling himself, and his father chastising him not because he did not love him, but actually because he loved him. He didn't want him to be spoiled because of Pratishta, and the poet wanted to kill his father at one point because Pratishta was poisoning him that much. But eventually, when he heard the real reason of this, he fell at the feet of his parent and really was able to appreciate this is the highest form of affection. This is the highest form of mercy. So sometimes Guru will show that special type of confidence, of trust. We share also the story of Advaita Acharya with Srimad Mahaprabhu and how Advaita did not tolerate being so much respected by Mahaprabhu, and he wanted to be treated as a junior, not as an elder. And he devised a whole plan and started to preach some Apasiddhanta in order to receive the chastisement of Mahaprabhu, his special mercy. And he did it actually, with this showing to all of us how desirable is that type of connection with the higher realm. When the higher realm is considering us its property and will treat us accordingly. So chastisement has to do with that, ideally speaking. Of course, this is not to be misapprehended and abused, because everything can be abused and taken out of context and create a whole deviation from that. We are trying to maintain that in a particular context. As we say, a text out of context becomes a pretext. So we should be very careful with that. And of course, all the things that we have been speaking these last three lectures regarding Sri Guru, Guru Seva, somehow or other are applicable in one degree or another to the sadhu, to the principle of the sadhu, which is not only limited to Sri Guru. In the beginning of our practice, Bhagavatam is saying, even if you're a neophyte, beginner practitioner, you may be able to conceive the presence of the divine only in one direction, if you will, in a monochromatic way. Krishna, only Krishna and me, or my guru and me, but you may not yet be able to appreciate the whole constellation of sadhus and parampara. So this vision needs to be extended. Of course, we have to begin somewhere, and that somewhere may be guru, but from there we have to extend the idea of guru, the principle of guru, and see its universality as well. So gradually, this will happen in connection to the sadhus. And all these points that we have been sharing, these last three classes, are somehow applicable in our connection relationship with the sadhus. So that's why today, next class, and who knows for how long more, we will be speaking about Sadhu-sanga. Sadhu-sanga, which is again another way of saying Guru Seva. Of course, if we say Guru Seva, it means Sadhu-sanga at the same time. So let's define a little bit the terms, and let's try to share some ideas regarding that. Of course, the importance of the sadhu, some brief words about the tattva, if you will, the ontology of the sadhu, before entering about why should we behave as we should with the sadhu. That's a little bit the dynamic we are having these lectures. Before speaking about how to express Vaisnava etiquette relation to the guru, we share some guru tattva. Before expressing how to behave accordingly, what's the proper decorum relation to Nam, eventually we will speak a little bit about Nam Tattva, and so on. No? Because we need to, Tattva is there, the Sambandha is there to help us appreciate the depth, the generosity of that particular department, and that will naturally foster a commonsensical, if you will, a very spontaneous way of trying to approach that in the best possible way. So Sadhu-sanga, as you may also already know, what sangha, a type of sangha, as we always say, sangha means sometimes it's translated as association. So it means not only some casual company that I just speak with someone at one point and my life goes on without much change, but speaks about certain type of links or connection, relationships, where my whole identity becomes affected, for better or for worse, depending on which sangha. So we will speak about satsanga or sadhu-sanga and asatsanga. If this word sangha is there, sangha means there's a level of intimacy that is affecting your own sense of identity. So you should be very careful about which type of sangha you're having. But the whole idea of Vaisnava etiquette, as we spoke in the very first class, is to incorporate certain ways of dealing, if you will, with people and with sacred paraphernalia, sacred objects that may create certain samskars, certain impressions that gradually will become habits and eventually will create a whole sense of self, a whole personality. So Vaishnava etiquette is a lifestyle, as we already mentioned. So again, a lifestyle will alter, affect our sense of personality, our identity. And that's the whole idea of Vaishnava etiquette, and that's the whole idea of bhakti, to really becomes all that we can be in the context of devotion. So sadhu-sanga, sadhu of course refers to the saintly person, sometimes translated as saintly, although I would prefer to use the term as Sanatana Goswami defines the sadhu in Hari Bhakti Vilas as honest person, because sometimes with saintly we may have our own idea of what it means to be a saintly personality, and we may over conceive the idea, and not necessarily a sadhu is only a Paramahamsa Mahabhagavat Uttamadhikari or something. No? I mean, you can be a Kanishta Bhakta and still be a level of sadhu. There's a level of sadhuness there. So sadhu is more connected with this idea sadhu. So sad means real, true, honest. Has to do with someone who has integrity in his her ideal, no matter where you standing today. Let's say like that. You are sincere, you are transparent, you are honest. So sadhu and sangha means again association, intimate connection. And interestingly, also this word in the Gita and also the Bhagavatam and all along Vedic literatures also does also mean attachment. Krishna speaks about sangha as attachment. The Bhagavatam also says the same, prasanga majaram pasham, and so on. Many verses that say moksha dwaram apabritam. Attachment is the door to all entanglement, is the word, but when you direct that attachment to the sadhus, that opens the doors of redemption. Moksha dwaram apabritam. So sadhu sangha also implies this. It's not only association with honesty personified, but attachment to that. That implies association. I develop certain attachments, and those attachments alter my sense of personality, as we said before. In sangha, in a particular sangha, your sense of identity changes. Why? Because your attachments make your own identity, as my Guru Maharaj will say in his commentary to fifth verse of the Shikshastakam. Our material sense of identity is made up of attachments, and my sense of I depends on my sense of my. So in the same way, when you develop a sakti or spiritual attachment, a corresponding spiritual identity starts to arise. So this is the principle with the idea of sangha. Sangha means attachment and a corresponding identity in connection to that attachment. So sadhu sangha means in the context of that particular association with honest, transparent, saintly people, a corresponding honest, transparent, saintly identity will eventually emerge as a result of getting attached in that, developing attachments in that context. And of course, the same can happen in other directions, but we are concerned with developing our sadhu potential, if you will, sadhvi. So the sadhus are, as you may know, very dear to Hari. They represent his Kripa Shakti, his mercy department. They represent the most generous extension and transparent, again, a transparent medium for God's will coming to us in our lives. For example, I really like one verse from Padma Purana, which where Hari himself, Krishna speaking to Arjuna there, is 6:281, and he's saying, Samsaro Vaishnavadino Deva Vaishnava Palita, Aham Cha Vaishnavadhinas, Tasmat Shrestha Cha Vaishnava. He says the whole world is a very romantic praise of the Vaishnava by Krishna himself. He says, Samsaro Vaishnava Adino. The whole world, samsar, Vaishnava Adino, is under the care of the Vaishnavas, to begin with. The whole planetary multiverse is only sustained, not by gravity or any other law, but by the presence of saintly people and their prayers and their achar. That's what really keeps everything alive, ultimately, according to Krishna. Deva Vaishnava Palita. All the devas are doing palana, are supplying heat, light, air, water, etc., due to the support and nourishment of the Vaishnavas. The devas are supporting and giving support and nourishment, but actually they are receiving that from the Vaishnavas. Then Krishna himself says, Aham cha Vaishnavadinas. Actually, I myself, Aham, also cha Vaishnavadinas. I myself, I dependent on the Vaishnavas. I'm nourished by them. Aham bhakta paradino. Many verses like this, Krishna says. And he concludes saying, Tasmat, therefore, Shrestha cha Vaishnava. The topmost position, the highest position of all, Shrestha, is to be a Vaishnava. So that's a very high aspiration, and we have received that gift. But of course, we should chiefly consider ourselves Vaishnavas. Of course, there is a degree of Vaishnavism in us by the grace of the Vaishnavas, that we should be ready to acknowledge that in the context of the mercy they have given us and is allowing us to be Vaishnavas. But also we should bear in mind what a big ideal this is, Vaishnava. So this service to the Vaishnavas, Bhakta Seva, we may call it another way of speaking in terms of Sadhu-sanga, this is considered, as we also spoke, more important than the direct service to Krishna. Even in our eternal prospect, we will be serving Hari, Bhagavan, Mahaprabhu, Nityananda, Krishna, Golok, and so on. We won't be serving just them directly without any intermediary agents. They will be through the agency of the Vaishnavas. Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Krishna Bhakti Janma Mulhai Sadhu-sanga, Krishna Prem Janmetenho Punarmukyanga. Krishna Bhakti, Sadhu-sanga is the root cause for the birth of Krishna Bhakti. To begin with, and Bhakti is not inherent, it comes from Sadhu-sanga. And when you arrive to Krishna Prem, Janmetenho, when Krishna Prem get manifest, descends from the hearts of the Nitya seeds, Punarmukyanga, still Sadhu-sanga, when you are achieve Prem, Sadhu-sanga still is the most important anga of your practice, of your life, eternal life. So Sadhu-sanga is crucial not only in the beginning and not only at the end, and of course in the middle way as well. So we may be in the middle. We are not in Krishna Prem, and we have already gone through the beginning connection with the sadhus, and we receive bhakti through them. So now we're in the in-between stage, if we want to say it. So Sadhu-sanga is crucial on that point as well. And again, it's most cherished. Krishna himself is cherishing this service of the Vaishnavas. Again, Jiva Goswami will say, some people will conceive Krishna Bhakti as the Angi and Guru Bhakti or Vaishnava Seva as the Anga, but some others will conceive Vaishnava Seva as the Angi and Krishna Bhakti as an aspect of the service to the Vaishnava. And Krishna is much more pleased with that. As we mentioned the other day in our lecture on the prayers of Britra Sur, what I was going to, well, basically I was mentioning, quoting Srila Siddhar Maharaj when he mentions ours is the fifth position. First there is Krishna Das, the Nitya Siddhas who serve him. There is Krishna Das Anudas, the Sadhana Siddhas, those who are not Nitya Siddhas but attain a position of eternal perfection. There is the Dasa Anudas, the fourth position, the ones who are not even Sadhana Siddhas but are sadhakas, more advanced sadhakas, and then we come there in the fifth position, serving those advanced Vaishnavas, and in this way all this seva is transferred and to the converging point of the Lila and Krishna and so on. So we should feel very honored to occupy that fifth position or sixth position, if you will, if you want to go even lower. It's Vaishnavism is indirect, so it's no problem. Everything is reaching in the most secure way. So this Sadhu-sanga should be something that we feel very much, again, attached to. It's designed for becoming attached to it. So we should become attached to Sadhu-sanga. That's our life and soul. In that context, everything will come to us. Everything we need will express itself in the context of Sadhu-sanga. Sanatana Goswami, for example, in his Brihad Bhagavatamrita, paraphrasing Yudhishthira Maharaj, he mentions there, like, I long for association with devotees more than what I long to remain alive, basically. He says that. That's another way of saying, that's my life. Without that, I prefer to not live, because what's real life without Sadhu-sanga? What's real life without bhakti? The Bahuti saying the same, the Bhagavatam. Nehajat karma dharmaya na viragaya kalpati na tirtha pada sevaya jivanapi mrita hisaha. He says that activity which is not dharmic, and that dharma which is not taken to detachment, but that detachment which is not taken to bhakti, a person who is engaging in all that but do not reach the converging point of bhakti, sadhu-sanga, is dead, even though he or she may be breathing. So what's real life? No? So this Sanatana Goswami mentioning here. I wish for sadhu-sanga more than I wish to remain alive. So that's real life, that's the point. Similarly, when there was Istagosi, questions and answers between Mahaprabhu and Rai Ramananda, famous Ramananda Sambad, after Ramananda presents the highest possible theological converging point, Mahaprabhu starts to ask some other brief questions. So one of them, he says to Ramananda, he asks, what's the highest type of joy? And Ramananda will say, to be with the devotees. And what's the greatest calamity? Separation from the devotees. So all this he presents in the context of Sadhu-sanga. My greatest delight, Sadhu-sanga. My greatest calamity, lack of Sadhu-sanga. So we should try to not, again, force ourselves into accepting these ideas, but really understanding why they are saying that. Because they are fully enlightened, fully awakened people who really see things as they are, and they share those statements as a legacy to us. So how we should try to incorporate this. So Sadhu-sanga means, again, is very connected to this idea of Vaisnava etiquette. Actually, Sadhu-sanga, to really engage in Sadhu-sanga, which is a main limb of bhakti, Uttam Bhakti, Sadhu-sanga in itself means to enter into the circle of proper conduct, of proper decorum, of Vaishnava etiquette. In one sense, sadhachar is synonym with sadhu-sanga. We cannot really separate the two, because, again, sadhachar represents the codes, if you will, that will give me access to this confidential realm, domain called sadhu-sanga. There's a way of dealing there, of conducting ourselves or relating with our practitioners. Sadhu-sanga is like a protection, circle of protection, and so on. And of course, as I mentioned, we can say the same by speaking indirectly about what sadhu-sanga is not. And sometimes it's called asat-sanga, which means connection with that which is not real, which is not permanent, which is not honest, which lacks integrity. Bad association, sometimes translated as such. And again, here I'm not just speaking with someone on the street for 5 minutes, but a type of deep connection that starts to create some scars and affect my identity. And this is very important in connection to Vaishnava etiquette. I have to really pound this post. Bhaktivinoda Thakur once said this in this connection. He said, unless you renounce a satsanga, you cannot be properly situated in the platform of Vaishnava etiquette. So indirectly speaking, he's saying, if you want to enter into the circle of Vaishnava etiquette, you have to embrace sadhu-sanga. But if you embrace a satsanga, there is no way for you to really enter into that platform, to acquire certain standing in the realm of Vaishnava etiquette. Mahaprabhu himself said that. He said, Satsanga tyag e Vaishnava char. That's the same way put in other words by Mahaprabhu himself. He said, a Vaishnava char. The achar of the Vaishnava, the decorum, the behavior of the Vaishnava, mainly is characterized as satsanga tyag. Tyag means to renounce. So renunciation of bad association, that's one of the main aspects of Vaishnava behavior. Because again, I want to become a Vaishnava means I need to acquire certain samskars, certain influence. So I will avoid everything that will go in the opposite direction. So this is what asatsanga means. And again, asatsanga, of course, takes so many forms. I may not have time to go into detail with that, but we should at least be aware. Asatsanga is not necessarily a person, if you will. It's not necessarily the atheistic demons in the Kali Yuga. Sometimes we want to demonize everyone in this way. Not only the Maya bodies, and of course, these are considered as part of Sadhu-sanga. Also, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Satsanga, sorry, Bhaktivinoda Thakur spoke about the Dharma Dwajis. Those are especially dangerous. The ones who are waving the flag of Dharma, of religion, but in the name of religion, they are doing exactly the opposite. They are using the religion or bhakti or Gaudiya Vaishnavism, an external appearance of that, just to do the opposite of that. So they seem to be devotees, but they may be the opposite. That can happen. So we should be aware of that. But also we can extend this idea to social media, for example. That can be really a satsanga. And we should be very careful of not indulging in it at all. I mean, we can use social media, that's one thing. Indulging in a satsang is another thing through social media. So we should be very sad, very honest, very sincere about how much of my relationship with social media nowadays is nourishing my sadhu-sanga and how much is not doing that, and most probably is going nourishing a satsanga, because I don't want to be speak in terms of black and white, but at one point it can happen. I mean, if that's not nourishing my sense of sadhu-sanga, which type of nourishing or malnourishment is there? So we should really be sincere and introspective about that and take care, because again, externally everything is okay. I'm going to the temple and with the devotees, but in my private world of social media, that's a very particular danger of social media. It's very private. Nobody knows what you are doing when you're taking your cell phone or opening your computer. Mostly nobody knows. Maybe the rest of the community will see you when you are doing things externally, and they may say, okay, this is wrong or not. But if you are with your cell phone, who knows? You may be hearing a lecture from your Guru Maharaj, or you may be doing exactly the opposite. So that requires a lot of self-restraint, self-control. So we should take all these considerations again in a sustainable way and to take care of our devotional project. So Sadhu-sanga is quite connected to Vaishnava etiquette. Actually, Vaishnava etiquette, what it wants to give us the fullness of Sadhu-sanga. That's the ultimate purpose of Vaishnava etiquette. It wants to gift us with the fullness of Sadhu-sanga, I will say. And when I say the fullness of Sadhu-sanga, I imply gradually we should grow in that direction. It's not that I have Sadhu-sanga. Of course, we may be having Sadhu-sanga, but we may be also having a Satsanga. Even in the name of Sadhu-sanga. That didn't happen. We get together with some people. No, we were with the devotees, yeah, but what you were doing? You were speaking Harikatha, embracing Harinam, trying to increase your commitment with the ideal, or you were just speaking gossip. That can happen in the name of sadhu. So sadhu-sanga is not a social event. Sadhu-sanga is not entertainment, if you will. It's not distraction. On the contrary, it's trying to together help ourselves to focus in the proper direction. So Vaishnava etiquette wants to give us full sadhu-sanga. Nowadays, we may have some sadhu-sanga, but also some asat-sanga. And according to the dimension of asat-sanga, there won't be full sadhu-sanga in our lives. And that's what Vaishnava etiquette wants to give us ultimately. Of course, we may not be able to just make a quantum leap in that direction, but at least we should be duly informed in that direction. That's the intention of Vaishnava etiquette. Give us the full comprehensive expression of Sadhu-sanga. And it's important also to have Sadhu-sanga, receive Sadhu-sanga, because as long as I do not receive Sadhu-sanga, I cannot be Sadhu-sanga for others. I cannot give good association to others as much as I'm not receiving that. So that's also an important point. It's not that I want Sadhu-sanga for me in a selfish way. Sadhu-sanga is not a selfish act, as we will see. It has to do with ourselves serving the sadhus who are giving us their association. And by the effect of such sangha, I may be blessed and get closer to becoming a sadhu and give sadhu-sanga to others and serve them in that context. So all this is in the context of seva, not of taking, not of consuming and exploiting, but of serving in one way or another. So let me refer for a minute to a very nice book that I really like, and I hope you do as well, which is the Upadeshamrita of Srila Rupa Goswami. This is a very simple book, if you will. Simple, it's quite complex, very brief at the same time, but very compact, and encapsulates many things that need to be properly unpacked in time. There are only 11 verses, but everything is there, starting from controlling your senses to the ultimate point of serving Sri Radha Kunda. In 11 verses, we have this type of journey. And this is a very interesting book in connection to Vaisnava etiquette, especially in the realm of Sadhu-sanga. Especially, I will highlight the first 4 verses. Of course, I won't go into detail. We have had some study of this Upadeshamrita, I think, last year, so you can find the audios there as well. But the first verses speak, especially the 4th, but the first 3 also gradually prepare the stage about how to relate with the different Vaishnavas. Verse 4, verse 5. For example, in verse 2 and 3, Rupa Goswami emphasized satsanga, the 2 of them. In the 2nd verse, he's speaking about what not to do. So he says, Satyahara prayasascha prayalpo nyamagraha jana sangas chalaulimcha. So jana sanga means you should avoid, it's another way of saying you should avoid asat sangha. Or if you, in this case, he's saying if you engage in asat sangha, your bhakti will be affected because there's every risk of whatever, aparad and so on. Then in the 3rd verse, when Rupa Goswami gives the do's, in the 2nd verse he gives the don'ts. In the 3rd verse he says what? He's saying utsaha nishchayat dairat tat karma pravartanat sangatyagat satobrite. Interestingly, sadvid bhaktir prasidati. He shares a 6-fold advice about what to do. So the 5th one, even though he in the 2nd one he say you should, if you engage in a satsanga, your bhakti will be negatively affected. Do not do that. And in the 3rd verse, he says, you should do this. What? Sangatyagat. You should abandon bad association. Sangatyagat. So he says the same thing in the next verse, in order to again emphasize, pound the post. And then he says sato brite immediately after that. Reject bad association, sato brite. Which means follow in the footsteps of the sadhus. Sorry. So in these 2 verses, he's laying the foundation. Do not embrace asat sangha, embrace sadhu-sanga. And then in the 4th verse, he goes to explain in greater further detail how to engage in sadhu-sanga. This is a very nice verse. He says, Tadati pratigrinati guyamakyati prichati bhungte bojayate chaiba shadvidam pritilakshanam. So there he describes, I will briefly mention that, 6 types of loving interactions between devotees. Pritilakshanam, symptoms of love, symptoms of affection that we should bear in mind when relating with devotees. So dadati pratigrinati, to give gifts to the devotees and accept gifts. As a way of giving and receiving affection. It's a 2-way street. It's a reciprocal dealing, sadhu-sanga. So dadati pratigrinati, so many gifts which can be not only the symbolic one, the gift of the association of Harikatha and your affection. That's a gift, of course, in itself. But sometimes that takes a form, and you may give some gift to a devotee, whatever may be necessary, or whatever you may like to share, and also accept that. And sometimes it may be more difficult to receive a gift than to give it. It requires humility, special humility also, to receive the gift and to really receive it in the sense of, I need this and I accept this gift, this mercy, this affection. Thank you very much. And then he says, Guyama Kyati Prichati, which has to do with revealing our mind in confidence and then also hearing others' minds, opening ourselves to the sadhu. So we can, if we want to enter into the sadhu's heart, we should allow the sadhu to enter our heart. We should give the password of our hearts. My Guru Maharaj sometimes will say that this Guhyama Kyati, or again, Sadhu-sanga means honest Sangha. Honesty means we should be honest with ourselves. We should reveal our minds. We should have nothing to hide. And my Guru Maharaj once, he said more than once, in one point, if you are living in a temple or in a community or somehow, every single day, at the end of the day, we should all of us get together, sit in a circle, and share how we failed today and how we can improve. And to hear everyone's testimony about their struggle, their sincere struggle to empty our hearts and to be filled with the others, hearing, compassion, affection, reciprocal dealings. So again, maybe we may not be able to do that strictly on a daily basis, but that's an important point, like the Christian confession, if you will. Now we should be able to empty ourselves. This in Greek is called kenosis, to empty yourself so you can be filled actually with something else. So Guyama Kyati Prichati Bhunkti Bojayate Chaiva. To give prasad and to receive prasad. We will speak more in detail about that in the class dedicated for prasad, in the form of sacred food stuff in this case. Of course, this refers to this. It's a way of, again, sharing affection, affectionate dealings, nourishing each other. In the Bhagavad Gita also, in Chatur Shloki of the Gita, Krishna shares a very beautiful definition of Sadhu-sanga on the second of these four essential verses of the Gita, which is the 9th verse of the 10th chapter. He says, Matchita Madgata Prana Bodhayanta Parashparam Kathayantastamam Nityam Tusyanti Charamanticha. So he's basically saying there, what is expected in Sadhu-sanga? What is Sadhu-sanga? What should we be doing in the context of Sadhu-sanga? Matchita Madgata Prana. He say, my devotees, their minds, their consciousness, their life is in me, fixed in me, pointed to me. That speaks about their ideal. Even though in practice they may be far from such a level, they cherish that goal. And they get together in order to get closer to that goal. That's the very life, some substance of Sadhu-sanga. And then he goes on to elaborate on that. No? Bodhayanta Parashparam, they enlighten each other in their company. Katayantas Shamam Nityam, speaking about me constantly, says Krishna. In Harikatha, when you take off Harikatha, and there's no Sadhu-sanga left, basically. If you say, no, there was Sadhu-sanga, but it was full of Prajalpa, there was no Harikatha, we say, which Sadhu-sanga was that? Interestingly, in the Bhagavatam, this same point is made. Susruso Sradhadanasya Vasudeva Katha Ruchi Syan Mahatsivaya Vipra Punyatirtha Nishrivana. There it is said that by association with the devotees, with the Mahats, you will Vasudeva Katha Ruchi, you will increase your taste for Vasudeva Katha, for Hari Katha. That's the natural result of Sadhu-sanga, an increasing of taste in Hari Katha. And of course, that implies there has to be Harikatha in Sadhu-sanga. So you increase your taste in Harikatha. It's not that I went for in Sadhu-sanga, it was full of Prajalpa, and the end result was my taste in Harikatha increased. It's not happening. So we should connect all these items one with another. What's the implication of this and this text to this and so on? So Katayantas Nityam to Shanti Cha Ramanti Cha, says Krishna. In this way, Sadhu-sanga implies common interest, common goal, nourishing each other, enlightening each other, constant speaking about himself. In this way, they express their affection towards each other by nourishing their own hearts, their own processes in a compassionate way, empathic way, devotional way. So all this is implying the idea of sadhu-sanga. That's expected from us. So after this fourth verse, Srila Rupa Goswami in the fifth verse, interestingly, describes how to deal with different types of people, of different types of devotees. That's an important point, because till now we spoke about sadhu-sanga in a more general way, generic, abstract way, the sadhus, the devotees, but there are levels of devotees. And we should know, gradually become acquainted with that in order to serve them in the best possible way. That's my point. It's not that we are discriminating in a critical way, but we are becoming acquainted of the different levels of sadhus, so I can reciprocate to each of them according in the best possible way, so I can serve them in the best possible way. The Srimad Bhagavatam also mentions that the qualities of the Madhyam Bhakta is that he will know how to relate with different types of personalities. So all this has to do more with the Madhyam orientation, where you no longer think in terms God and me, Guru and me, and there's nobody else, or all the devotees are the same in the same position. No, when you become more advanced, more progressive, you will start to perceive the gray in between the black and white, the nuance, and the flavors that give actual flavor, further flavor to your practice. So there you will realize, for example, in relation to Bhagavan, I'll worship Bhagavan, I have friendship, I render special service to the senior devotees. I relate as a friend with my equals, affectionate friend, of course, and with my juniors, if you will, I will act in a compassionate way, well-wishing way with those personalities. And even in connection, sometimes it's say with the envious people, I will serve them by taking some cautious distance from them. I would like to be closer, but the envy is so unbecoming that the only possible way I can serve them is taking some distance. I'm praying for them, of course, in that distance, and hopefully that gap may be bridged eventually. So it's very important how to deal with everyone, even with non-devotees. Of course, non-devotees not necessarily are envious people. We know that. Uh, but we should know how to deal with everything and everyone in the proper way. This has to do with adhikar also, establishing the capacity of every person. Adhikar means that you can do till here, you can act till there. This is your present capacity. So we should behave in a proper way. And Vaishnava etiquette has a lot to do with that. Of course, in the figure of Mahaprabhu, we see, as I mentioned in the first class, an extreme example of this. Extreme example. In certain cases, for example, how he dealt with Ramachandra Puri. You may know about him. But Ramachandra Puri was, what to do? He was a god brother of his guru, basically. He was a god brother of Ishwara Puri. They were disciples of Madhavendra Puri. But Ramachandra Puri criticized everyone, as you may know. And so he criticized, if a sannyasi was not eating too much, he will criticize. Your renunciation is superficial. If a sannyasi was eating too much, you are eating too much. There was never a point where he will say something apart from criticism. But by Mahaprabhu, he tolerated all that, and he offered respect to Ramachandra Puri as an uncle, because he maintained the etiquette. He's a god brother of my Gurudev. But the rest of the Vaishnavas were acting differently, and that's important to know. I mean, it's not that the other Vaishnavas followed Mahaprabhu; they understood what was going on, and they appreciated Mahaprabhu's stand. But also, they were protecting him, if you will, and they were not happy with Ramachandra Puri's behavior. But Mahaprabhu tolerated to an extreme degree until Ramachandra Puri left of its own. So again, there are different ways of dealing with different Vaishnavas. With senior Vaishnavas, and I'm sure in some general idea here, there are of course also shades of superiority, of seniority. Of course, a senior Vaishnava won't feel himself, herself senior Vaishnava. That's an important point. It's not that you can, oh, I'm disciple of Srila Prabhupada, offer me this respect, I'm senior than you. I mean, seniority is something that will play itself out in irresistible way, not in a forced, imposed way. There's no seniority at all there. Seniority will come naturally when you're extremely humble, extremely dedicated, extremely sincere. That will give you standing as a senior Vaishnava, even though you may have started 2 days ago with the practice, most probably in previous lifetimes in that case. But we should we should offer a special type of service to senior Vaishnavas. And also, we should be very careful about certain dealings that they may have between themselves, and we may witness them, and we may not be able to understand. That can happen from different levels. As you may know, once one disciple asked, I think it was a Chutananda, Srila Prabhupada was speaking with Srila Siddhar Maharaj. The other day I was seeing one lecture from Srila Siddhar Maharaj. He was remembering that moment. And he said, yes, Achutananda asked to Prabhupada, what were you speaking with Srila Siddhar Maharaj? And Prabhupada said, if I were to tell you, you will faint. So who knows? One may feel they were speaking about something very esoteric, or one may say they were having some differences. And for a new disciple, that may be too much to accommodate, and he may faint because of lack of accommodating capacity. That may also be a possibility. So this latter possibility is there. Sometimes two sadhus, senior sadhus, may have some differences on a certain level, and that may express itself in a certain way. And it is recommended that if we are juniors and we are witnessing that, we should be extremely careful, especially if one of those sadhus is our guru, and we may feel inclined towards being biased towards him and seeing the other person as an offensive person, but not necessarily. Not necessarily. Once Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj, he mentioned in that connection, he said, if you witness some difference between higher Vaishnavas, it's in your interest not to see that as a mundane conflict, he says. But actually, you should see that as some form of rehearsal for the dissemination and increasing of love, of the love of the two of them for Krishna, the increasing of harmony, if you will. And he concluded saying, Srila Puri Maharaj, when you understand that all the Vaishnavas are different members of the transcendental body of Krishna, you become equipoised and firm in your spiritual pursuits. So that's in a very nice way. Of course, Anuttam Bhagavata is saying that with such a vision like Srila Puri Maharaj, so exemplary in how he dealt with every single Vaishnava, such a humble way. But that's an important point. Whatever Vaishnava, but especially in this case, the higher Vaishnavas, if they're having some difference, some so-called problem, you should understand this is only something is going on for the increasing of their service disposition. So I should be very, very careful about which idea I will have in that connection. But again, we should respect everyone, every devotee, even a senior, a junior one, we should be very loving with them, very careful with them. There's this very nice pastime also with Srila Puri Maharaj when he was once in his Gopinath Gaudiya Math. He was already like 90 years or more. He lived for 102 years. So at one point he was there, and he already was, again, almost 100 years, 90 something. He was the Acharya of the mission, speaking with some devotees. And suddenly one devotee enters and shouts, like they may do in Bengal and some other places, like Prasad, like Prasad is ready. Like throwing that shout to the air for everyone. So Srila Puri Maharaj was sitting in the floor, and when he heard that, Prasad, like instruction to take, he started trying to wake up from the floor and trying to go. And the devotees were looking at him and said, what are you doing, Guru Maharaj? He said, Prasad is ready. I said, yes, but that was for the general public, for the devotees, not for you. Someone will bring you prasad for you here. But Srila Puri Maharaj was insisting, and trying to go. So they were trying to, there was this loving struggle. They were keeping him there. And Srila Puri Maharaj said, when a Vaishnava gives an order, I must obey. But of course, he said that with full realization, full insight, in such a way that you really felt it. that's the idea. That's the goal. And he was again a new Vaishnava. He may have been practicing for some years, and Srila Puri Maharaj was already practicing for a century or so. But he was not considering I'm senior. His consideration was he's a Vaishnava. He gave an instruction, and my duty is to follow the Vaishnava, no matter what form it takes. So that was a pretty charming moment as well. So that's a very nice way of even dealing with so-called juniors. When you are really advanced, of course, you won't see any juniors. You really will enter into the realm of everything is to be served by me. Nobody is to serve me in any single way. So that's the great expertise you develop in time. You become very expert in serving everyone and not being served by anyone in a natural way, again, not neurotic way. So let's share some brief words before finishing. Also, we spoke about dealing with senior devotees, senior Vaishnava, dealing with junior Vaishnava, but also with equals. In one point, this is the most difficult one, even though it may seem it's not. For some, it may seem the easiest one, but it's not, because in one sense, it's relatively easier to connect yourself to a higher Vaishnava and show yourself behave in a certain way. There's some difference, some distance, no? Master and servant, or with the junior, you are the higher, the senior, the other is the junior, but with equals, you are equals. There's no special, I mean, of course, there's a special treatment, there's love, affection, but in one sense, there is a sense of equality, as our Guru Maharaj describes in context of Sakya Rasa. Both parties feel the same to one another. There's no difference in bhav, if you will. Like the mother feels toward the child will feel different towards the mother, and vice versa. But between friends, it's the same. And this sometimes can be quite challenging for the ego. The person is just treating me like a friend with full confidence. Of course, that's a special type of treatment we should appreciate. But I've seen sometimes in time devotees may get, like Srila Sridhar Maharaj will say, intoxicated with bhaktsalya, which means, especially if you become older and senior devotee and you have many junior devotees praising you, what to speak if you become a guru, sannyasi, or whatever, all day long, this kijai in the environment. So you have to know how to deal with that. And many people saying you are incredible, you are the topmost, and you may become blind and deaf with that, if you will. You can become intoxicated of Vatsalya, he said, Silasir Maharaj. Like if a father has some little children and the children say, you are the best father in the world, there's nobody like you, and he becomes addicted to hear that type of praise and no longer has an ear for his friends who may come and treat him in equal terms and may criticize him and may observe, see certain things. So that can happen also if you attain certain standing or even position and are surrounded by just babies who are glorifying you. I don't say that's the wrong thing if that has to happen, but be very careful of remaining open to your equals, to receiving that type of input and feedback, because you may become intoxicated of Vatsalya and just wanted to be surrounded by people that will say you are the best, you are the best. So the relation between, of course, spiritual brothers and equals in this context should be very affectionate. It is said that if between God siblings, God brothers, God sisters, they do not remind each other their beloved Gurudev, they do not perceive their beloved Gurudev in each other when they see each other, that's an important point. We should conclude that they are not obtaining great benefit from having accepted the Guru. That's a very important point. You accept the Guru, and how do you know? There's a nice way of measuring how you are getting benefit of accepting a Guru. It means how much you are able to perceive your Gurudev in his or her disciples. In your daily Sadhu-sanga, how much you can grasp and absorb the presence of your Guru in his, her servants. So that's a very important point. In our Sadhu-sanga, three gurus should be present there because that's our common bond, if you will. We are bond together with our God siblings. We have this great personality in common, and we should, our own practice, our own ideals, that should be like emanating from us and reminding each other about Srila Gurudev. And we depend a lot on our brothers and sisters. I remember once Thomas Merton, he said that, he said, our success depends in great measure from the prayers of our brothers and sisters. So that's another very nice way of showing each other affection. And that's Vaisnava etiquette in the context of Sadhu-sanga, to pray for our God brothers, God sisters. My Guru Maharaj, generally when he gives, for example, initiation to someone, Harinam or Diksha, after giving the mantra, the name and all the details, he will ask the Vaishnavas, the assembly of Vaishnava present, please for a minute, let's bless this new aspirant practitioner, so he may make further progress in his Nam Seva. So everyone becomes in silence and starts to pray for the welfare of that person. But again, this shouldn't be only at that precise moment and never more. We should continue doing that, because we should feel, if I am able to maintain myself in my practice, that's because Sri Guru and Vaishnavas are praying for me, they are well wishing towards me, and that's creating an effect. It's not that I'm just maintaining my vows or standing my own effort or whatever. So we should really be humble and humbled by that. You know, I'm being sustained, nourished by their prayers. So I also will try to reciprocate and to pray in a where we yeah, well-wishing way, basically. So give me some further minutes. I will extend a little bit, not too much today, but I would like to share some brief points before finishing. But again, regarding equals, we continue with this idea of the equals. I mean, sometimes brothers have quarrel between each other. That's part of the Sakya Rasa. I remember once my Guru Maharaj said that. He said, I practically have love-hate relationships with all of my god brothers. But love is at the bottom of that. No? That hate is quote unquote hate. We love each other at the same time because we have so much deep things, so many deep things in common, and we have given our lives in that direction. But in the surface of that, I may think they made some nonsense, and I may say that, but they may think the same regarding me. And we are brothers, and sometimes brothers will quarrel. That's the point. No? Sometimes we may see brothers quarreling, but it doesn't mean they do not love each other. So we should be able to separate. We see some Vaishnavas having some conflict. It doesn't mean they do not love each other. So we should be very careful and pay proper respect to every Vaishnav, especially our equals, and especially if you have the chance of living with some other Vaishnavs, that will be a very nice special challenge. And for most of us, that happens, whether you are monastic and you live with others in the ashram, or whether you are married and you have a family and your family are Vaishnavas who are living with you. Do not forget that, please. There should be Sadhu-sanga. Once one devotee told me that. Say, oh, Maharaj, I'm living here far away from the temple. I'm not having Sadhu-sanga so long. And I say, but you have a wife and 3 children. Do not forget, they are Vaishnavas. There should be Sadhu-sanga. You should be Sadhu-sanga for them. So the point is, in the context of this, it's easy also to glorify some the principle of Vaishnavas from a distance, but it's relatively comfortable, not very challenging. We are not being demanded too much. So our Bhakta Seva also should express itself in our attitude with the devotees that are surrounding ourselves. So that's a good way of seeing how do you play yourself out in this context of Sadhu-sanga with the ones you are living with the one you are relating to in a nearby way. Because when you are living with someone close, so much relativity appears and you start to see so many details of the person and you may become entangled in relativity and so-called defects, and you have to go beyond that and really reach the depths of the heart of that person. And because it's easy to glorify a devotee that I'm seeing once a year for 15 minutes and say, oh, Prabhu, you're incredible, oh, you, Mataji, whatever, at the distance. But when you really get closer and enter into the domain of relationships and all that it implies, there we will be put to test about how much do we want to engage in sadhu-sanga. Because again, in the spiritual world, there will be a big community. There will be lots of relationships. It's not you and Krishna, you and Subal, you and Lalita Saki, you and your Guru and Krishna. There is full range of relationships. So now we are to train ourselves in that. Now we are to learn how to properly deal with everyone. If we do not learn the lesson here, we won't be able to enter there. So again, we shouldn't force ourselves in a superficial way to all that, but we should understand the importance of appreciating, again, every devotee, and not, especially if you get closer to someone, not becoming distracted by some apparent fault they may have. Rupa Goswami also speaks about that in the Upadeshamrita. Even though the Ganges may seem to have certain dirt on the water, on the surface, and foam, and this, still Ganga water, Ganga Jal, is totally purifying. So in the same way, a Vaishnava may appear externally to have some defect or maybe of a low birth, if you will, but you should not judge him or her by that. But you should learn to appreciate the power, the influence of bhakti in that person, and how even if that person comes from a not so high background, if you will, you should not conclude about that person because of that material samskar, but about how bhakti is entering and the prospect of that. So let me close today's lecture sharing one more story that I feel it's very charming and it's very beautiful and has been told by many Vaishnavas who were able to hear that, my Guru Maharaj included and some others. And this story is including Srila Prabhupada on one side and Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj on the other. You may know it, but it's quite connected to this idea. And this is a story that Srila Puri Maharaj himself has given. And again, who is Srila Puri Maharaj? No, he's like the exemplar personification of the third verse of Sikshastakam, humility and service to the Vaishnavas. And he himself, on many occasions, he gave these instructions. All of us are equal. We should not discriminate between devotees. Of course, again, this is this type of discrimination I mentioned in the sense of serving in a better way. But all that on the foundation of everyone is Vaishnava, unity, and diversity on top of the foundation of that unity of veneration of Vaishnavism. And especially the point here is very offensive according to Shastra to discriminate the devotee due to his birth, to his gender, or to all this relativity of physical deficiency or some past action or some moral lapse she may have during his devotional practice. And just considering limiting the prospect of that person to that particular event, that's considered Vaishnava Aparada, basically. So this is not allowed, and Srila Puri Maharaj was someone who emphasized a lot that, especially in his last years, when we will see Western disciples came to him, but how this happened. So once upon a time, Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he was in Mayapur, in his Chandrodaya Mandir on one occasion, and he invited his god brothers to visit him. And Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj was among them. So they had been associating nicely for a while, and eventually Srila Prabhupada, after speaking and sharing Harikatha and Hari Kirtan, he invited them for prasadam. And he has his Western disciples cooking and serving the prasadam and so on. So Prabhupada was with his god siblings, his Western disciples came, served the prasadam, some water. So at that point, the Prabhupada, God's brother, was looking at the situation, and these were very new situation for them, and seeing these new Western Vaishnavas and so on, they say maybe they have not, we should not take maybe this prasad. They may not be so expert they may not have proper cleaning habits, and again they started to judge them according to their material background. So they did not took prasad. They did not even accept the water that was given, and eventually they're left. So, but Prabhupada was not there present. No, the disciples just weren't there with him. So eventually Prabhupada came to know about this. So Prabhupada was very sad, really, very disappointed. So he was wondering why my God brothers didn't accept my disciples, because that was his feeling. It's not that they didn't accept the prasad, they didn't accept my disciples. And he was thinking, they are Vaishnavas, actually. They are not my disciples, they're Vaishnavas. Why they did not appreciate that? The Vaishnavism in them. They may be young, they may be white elephants and a little bit wild and so on, but the grace of Bhakti Devi has entered their lives, so that should be honored. So he was like kind of sad and thinking about that. They had come in contact with Mahaprabhu, Srinam, Sridham, Prasadam. So Prabhupada was disappointed. So this was like in 1973 approximately, some 4 years before Prabhupada passed away. So after this, some years passed, and eventually when Prabhupada was, his preaching became more and more successful, more people joining, more projects, more books, more everything. And his god brothers in time starting to witness that and realize there is something bona fide here. I mean, there's some, Shakti Aves, there is so much transcendental Shakti flowing through Prabhupada. So at one point they understood This is the divine grace of Prabhupada's guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and and the prediction that of Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta, he wanted to go to Western countries. All this was fulfilled through Swami Maharaj, as they will call him, Srila Prabhupada. So in time, they start to realize this, and they changed internally their mood, at least a good number of them, most of them. So eventually, in 1977, which was the last year when Prabhupada left this world on November 14th, some weeks before his leaving, Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj visited Srila Prabhupada in Sri Krishna Balar Mandir in Vrindavan. So at this point, Prabhupada was in bed, already ill, and this was a very memorable meeting that many devotees have shared. So there was a very sweet, deep, natural exchange between the two of them. And Prabhupada, he received Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj, again following this exemplary Vaisnava etiquette between good brothers, affectionate. And Prabhupada said to Srila Puri Maharaj something that he said to many of his good siblings: Maharaj, I want to be excused if I have committed any offense against you, if I've made any negative remark regarding you or any of my good brothers. Please, I beg you, forgive me and convey this message to our good brothers that are not here present now. I don't want to create any difficulty. I just say what I said in a certain context. Please understand that. Srila Puri Maharaj, of course, reciprocated in a similar Vaishnava way. Say, no, Maharaj, you have not made any offense, actually. Sometimes you had to protect your disciples by saying something, by speaking strongly, and that's made perfectly sense for us. This was totally new, so it was proper you took that stance, but you made no offense. Even Prabhupada, Puri Maharaj said, like, you are like the great general of the army of Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta, so go ahead, you do as you are doing, everything is okay. And Prabhupada, of course, again, this is the humble struggle between two great souls. Prabhupada said, no, Maharaj, that's not true. That's not true. I know very well why I'm asking to be excused from you. I made an offense to some of my good brothers with my remarks about them. I spoke sometimes harshly about them. I feel very sorry about that. No, he was practically crying in his deathbed. So you can imagine the emotional intensity of that scenario. So now all types of wars should be end. He said the same thing to his disciples, Prabhupada. No, the end is over, please. We should work together in group for the welfare of everybody. And in this way, Prabhupada was speaking. And again, Srila Puri Maharaj insisted, no, Maharaj, Swami Maharaj, you have not done anything wrong. We are the ones, Srila Puri Maharaj said, who made the mistakes. We were not able to appreciate you, your disciples, fully in the past. So please forgive us. So this is the natural exchange between two great souls. No, you didn't make anything. I'm the one, not I'm the faulty one. And the other one will say the opposite. And this natural loving struggle. So in this way, the exchange went on. And this was, of course, not only with Srila Puri Maharaj. When other God brothers came to see Prabhupada, Prabhupada said the same things to them. And Prabhupada wanted us to know how much love and respect he had towards all other Vaishnavas. That's an important point that unfortunately not everyone grasped that, and many of his disciples still think all the Prabhupada God brothers are offenders and demons and so on. And we should understand this properly because Vaishnava Parat can be there. So going back to the meeting, in this exchange of Prabhupada and Srila Puri Maharaj, all of a sudden at one point Srila Prabhupada inquired, says, Srila Puri Maharaj, can you offer me a gift? Dadati pratigrinati. So Srila Puri Maharaj said, yes, of course, Maharaj, whatever you want. So Prabhupada said, you were singing when our Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta was leaving this world, you started singing kirtan, but at one point your kirtan was interrupted, and Srila Siddhar Maharaj, at the explicit desire of Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta, was singing Sirupa Manjari. So you were not able to sing that for him. So could you please sing that song for me? Srila Prabhupada asked Srila Puri Maharaj, can you sing Sirupa Manjari for me? So of course Srila Puri Maharaj agreed and started singing, and he was famous as a very sweet kirtaniya. So he sang Srirupa Manjari, Pada, he sang many other songs as well to Srila Prabhupada. That was their last meeting, basically. So he sang for about an hour, a cappella. You can imagine the moment. Srila Prabhupada, in his deathbed, Srila Puri Maharaj absorbing kirtan, and that was their Again, dadati prati grinati, giving, receiving, gift. So Srila Prabhupada was absorbing his deathbed here in the kirtan of Srila Puri Maharaj, full of bliss. So after some time, the kirtan ended. Prabhupada said, Maharaj, may I also offer you a gift now? Again, dadati prati grinati, you gave me this gift. Can I give you some gift? So Srila Puri Maharaj said, yes, whatever you may like to give me, I accept that. Okay, okay. So they continue speaking, and at one point, Prabhupada calls for a big plate of Mahaprasad and some water for Srila Puri Maharaj. So he asked, please take this, honor this prasad of Sri Krishna Balaram. My disciple had prepared this. So Srila Puri Maharaj very happily took the prasad. And some time had passed, and well, Puri Maharaj paid farewell and left the place. So then Srila Puri Maharaj shared his afterthought to Mola Prakriti, who is a disciple, lady disciple of Prabhupada, who wrote a nice book about Prabhupada also before going to Western countries, and very nice book. So Srila Puri Maharaj spoke with Mola Prakriti in one interview. A few weeks before he's leaving this world, Srila Puri Maharaj left this world 22 years after Srila Prabhupada in 1999. So he said in this connection, he said to Mola Prakriti, I want to say something about Srila Swami Maharaj that you should know, and everyone who reads your book. And he says, I was thinking about the gift he gave me. And because he told me that time, now it was like more than 20 years back, he said he wanted to give me a gift. He served me some prasadam. But this is a common thing to serve prasadam. And actually, as we say, Rupa Goswami says, to give gifts and receive the gift, and then say to give and receive prasadam, like putting in another category altogether. So Puri Maharaj was thinking, actually to serve prasadam is a common thing. You will not call it a special gift. That's the point, to invite someone for prasadam. But all of a sudden, Srila Puri Maharaj said, it started to dawn on me what Swami Maharaj gave me. And what gave me beyond the plate of prasadam, he gave me the gift to understand the power of bhakti in the form of prasadam. How this prasadam has to do with bhakti, and how this bhakti was affecting his own disciples who were coming from a Western background. Now, everyone, even from the West, Srila Puri Maharaj said, from whatever condition they may come, they can get the full mercy of Mahaprabhu. They can undergo full transformation. They won't be considered, they should not be considered as second-grade devotees, second-grade Brahmins, or second-grade sannyasis or imitations because they had a Western background. So Srila Puri Maharaj concluded in this way, no? Srila Prabhupada gave me the gift of understanding the full power of the holy name of Sri Nam. I have, Srila Puri Maharaj said, and you have to have so much humility to be able to recognize this, having 102 years old and being who he was. So he said, I have been chanting through all my life, and that's a fact. Srila Puri Maharaj said that. And he gave me, Prabhupada gave me such a gift, such a sweet gift. From that time onwards, Puri Maharaj said, when I realized the gift of Prabhupada, I understood, and he was at this time like, whatever, 80 something years, I understood that I should also dedicate my life and capacity and time serving the devotees from the Western countries. It was from that moment onwards that Srila Prabhupada said that I changed my mentality toward Western devotees and gave all the help to them that I could give. So that was the gift of Swami Maharaj to me, said Srila Puri Maharaj. Then, when he told me he was sorry, Puri Maharaj was thinking, I could understand why he has said that to me so many times. Now, we are all equal, Baba. We are equal. Srila Puri Maharaj will say this many times. We are equal, Baba. We should not make any distinction between devotees. So again, this is a very nice story that shows us how to properly deal with God brothers, how to properly deal with new devotees, with seniors. And again, if we make distinctions, it's because we have not made distinctions first, and we have determined that all Vaishnavas are worshipable to us. And then the other distinctions will come. That's more important. But first of all, we should contemplate the absolute foundation. All Vaishnavas are worshipable. On the basis of that, there will be some distinctions in order of how to worship them in the best possible way. Only in that context, how to serve each of them in the best possible way. So some ideas I wanted to share with you today, and ending with this very nice story between Srila Prabhupada and Srila Puri Maharaj concerning Sadhu-sanga. And we have some few minutes, so if any of you may have any question or comment or something you may like to share, here I'm allowing for you to activate, unmute yourself, and you may present your question, or if you have something written, you can also send that via chat, however you may like.
Dandavats Maharaj, I have a question if there's time.
Tell me.
So my question is regarding the topic of engaging in satsanga and disengaging from asatsanga. So I guess my question is regarding how to properly apply this principle, particularly being that I guess historically sometimes people in various Gaudiya Vaishnava institutions have kind of taken this principle and applied it in a way where they just kind of cut off all of their friends and family who are not interested in Gaudiya Vaishnavism at all, or kind of maybe had an attitude of like anyone who's not involved in Gaudiya Vaishnavism is a demon kind of thing, and maybe in a sort of unhealthy or maybe some would say unnatural disengagement sort of thing. And I guess I was just wondering if you could elaborate on how to properly or maybe like helpfully apply this principle. And I mean, I guess it's just been something that's sort of confusing to me over the years of studying Gaudiya Vaishnavism and hearing phrases like non-devotee is doesn't possess any good qualities, or maybe I'm misinterpreting that.
Mhm.
If you could clarify,
Yeah,
I would really appreciate. Thank you,
yeah,
Maharaj.
of course. Yeah, of course, unfortunately, and as with every tradition, I mean, Gaudiya Vaishnavism is not the exception to the rule. Uh, it happens everywhere because in every practice there are beginners, immature practitioners, so we are not to be extremely surprised because of that. But yes, we should know how to differentiate, discern between the acts of a neophyte and what it's actually being stipulated, declared in the scripture. For example, that day one devotee wrote to me, quoting one verse from the Bhagavad, famous verse, Haro Bhaktasya Mahakuto Guna, and so on, Jasti Bhaktir Bhagavati Kincha, which says basically all the good qualities are in the devotee, and a non-devotee has no good qualities at all. So he was asking me, so how to understand that? Because two things can happen. We can become overconfident in our being a devotee and thinking, oh, I have all good qualities. The verse even says all the qualities of the devas. So I'm above all the devas. I'm already devotee. And whoever is not a devotee, not good quality. And again, this could be a very black and white perspective. No, she's a devotee. He's a non-devotee. So it's not black and white. You can be a devotee and still be a non-devotee on certain section of yourself. And some person may be a non-devotee till now because bhakti has not touched that person, but is a person who may have a host of good qualities, but those qualities won't be expressed in the context of bhakti. That's a fact. We should acknowledge that. So in the explanation of this Bhagavatam verse that says non-devotees had no good qualities, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur expands, they had no devotional qualities at all because they had no devotion yet. But it's not saying they will never have, they are condemned for eternity, nothing like that. It's just bhakti didn't come to their lives. So all the qualities they are expressing is not in the context of bhakti. It's not for condemning those persons, but actually for you to feel compassionate towards them and try to extend bhakti to their lives. I mean, how that plays itself out, that's an important point. So the same thing goes with this, with your question. We may say, sadhu-sanga, sat-sanga. Again, this is not a black or white thing. It's like, okay, I met the devotees, and my mother has not embraced Gaudiya Vaishnavism, so for sure she must be a satsanga. And that's not a fact. No, we shouldn't think like that. No, I mean, a satsanga, if a person is pious, is a good person, is sattvic, and is not critical, is not negative, is not against what you are doing, but it's not also practicing that. It's not that it's a satsanga. I mean, if I'm having some, let's say, interreligious dialogue with a Christian mystic, I won't think, oh, he's a satsanga because he's not a Gaudiya Vaishnava. I mean, you can become extremely sectarian. You can say even Oh, he's not a God. He's a Sri Vaishnava, but not a Gaudiya Vaishnava. So he's a satsanga also. He's not nourishing my Braja Bhakti. So he's going against that. No, it's not like that. I mean, maybe if you are too immature to deal with those personalities and learn something from them, that's another thing. And you may take a distance from them because of your own lack of capacity, but not because they are a satsanga. Now, as I always say in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, when Gopakumar is in his journey, he finds in the midst of his journey so many devotees from different lineages, if you will. And they are not a satsanga for him. He's learning from all of them. He's taking things and in such a way that that's nourishing his own faith. So we should not be neurotic. And again, if you have received some of those samskars in the past, well, you now are in the process of cleaning your chitta from those samskars and really understanding that's not what Krishna consciousness is about. If someone presented Krishna consciousness under such a disguise, that was their own misconception. But Krishna consciousness has nothing to do with mm, bigotry and sectarianism and fundamentalism. So now, of course, that said, a satsanga, as I mentioned, the word sangha means like very close and intimate association that will affect my identity. So some person may be sattvic and may have certain or religious or spiritual in another direction, and I may realize I can appreciate them, learn from them, but also there is a point where I won't be able to associate fully in depth because we don't share that level of depth in connection to our ultimate goal. So in that sense, I won't expect to be nourished by them in that connection. And if I insist in that direction, I may get confused if I'm not too advanced. Again, it's not their fault. We are not speaking here about finding the enemy outside. Hmm? And when I say at satsanga, we should first of all deal with all the satsanga that is going on in our own minds, because we may easily point at satsanga, be careful outside there, but our own mind out of control is at satsanga. All the anarthas that are still playing themselves out are satsanga. So, so maybe I didn't was enough clear in that connection, but that's a fact. So we should be dealing in a compassionate way, and even if someone is not a devotee and is not offering me satsanga in the ultimate sense of the term, we also see everyone in the context with it, with their potential, their prospect. So someone may not be a sadhu, but has the potential of being a sadhu. That's the whole main impetus for preaching, for example. If I preach to someone, it's not because I want to convert you or I want to whatever. I want to be famous because I made that devotee. But I will feel, oh, if I can extend the mercy of that came to my life to that soul, that person may become a Vaishnava and eventually give me his or her association, and I will be blessed by their sangha. That's the real humble approach to preaching. To purify myself, trying to extend the gift that touched my heart, but so that that person that is not now a sadhu, but has the potential, every jiva has the potential for bhakti. So eventually, I may be blessed by that potential and be able to render better service to them and so on. So I think we should be much more generous and broad and mature in that connection. And again, if someone is too immature to even be able to tolerate my words now, that my person may need to be put in a cage for a while and not be able to deal too much with anyone because it's too much. That person may get too neurotic. So you need to put some fence around. But again, the purpose of the fence is that you grow healthily in the fence and eventually realize what's outside the fence and don't think in terms of enemies outside and so on, but basically, yeah, dealing with everyone in a proper way. But the conclusion is this again, Sadhu-sanga will mean that type of association when I'm sharing the deepest uh, ideals of my life. And we know we cannot do that with everyone. I mean, we cannot do that with everyone, even though there may be sattvic, good persons, but we may not be doing with them. It's not because they are demons or bad people, but just it's not possible, at least till now. Maybe in time that may be possible, but you cannot share everything about Gaudiya Vedanta with any single person in the world, even though they may be sattvic, religious, devotees. So there's this healthy discernment, but always in the context of respect, compassion, and humility. So I hope that helps.
Yes, it really does. Thank you very much,
Okay,
Maharaj. That
thank you.
made a lot of sense.
Great. Any other question? Okay. So I will think we are already on time, so we will finish here and see you next Thursday. We will continuing sharing some ideas connected to Sadhu-sanga. So even if you have further questions or whatever you may like to share, we will continue speaking next Thursday. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Shriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Shri Dwadasi ki jai, Sadhu Sangha ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanam Haribo Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.